Legal analyst Elton Hart from the University of Johannesburg Law Clinic now joins us to unpack former Paralympic star Oscar Pistorius Parole. Good afternoon to you, Elton, and thank you for your time with us here on the SABC.
Good afternoon to the viewers.
Perhaps for context's sake, you could just speak to the Constitutional Court having ruled that Oscar had been eligible for parole since March 2023 after serving half his sentence for the murder of Reeva Steenkamp, before we get to the parole and its conditions this time round.
No, indeed. The thing that was before the Constitutional Court, it was more or less they were looking at the computation of days to see if he has served half of his sentence or not. And in the ruling, it became apparent that the Constitutional Court said how the correctional authorities at that stage were computing the days was incorrect, and that he has actually served 50% of his sentence, and he was then eligible to be considered for parole. And we should understand, parole is not a right, it's a privilege that is afforded to offenders and convicted persons.
Elton, thank you for that. So now at this point, perhaps you could speak to the parole conditions and also highlight the difference between full parole and day parole according to the Correctional Supervision Parole Board, and really what Oscar will will have to adhere to.
Now, obviously, parole is like, and this is not something new that they're doing with Oscar Pistorius. These things has been happening. It's just that it's not reported so frequently in the media. He has that he will be assigned to an officer, and this officer was like a case manager while he's on parole. So if he starts running again, for instance, because we know that he used to do athletics, if he starts running again, he needs to inform that officer. The officer needs to know 24/7 as to where he is at any given stage, and if he gets gainfully employed, he needs to give the employees details. So it's not something new. It's just now it's in the media. They put these conditions, and obviously they need to put conditions pertaining to a person's profile. So they need to look at, okay, in order to also protect the community, but also to protect the person, because we know this was a high-profile case. And to actually just put Oscar back into the community, some people might be angry that he's released on parole, and some people might be happy. And that we could see from the trial. There was people that was against and for, and hence the conditions that were set there to make sure that he's protected, he complies with the conditions, and he gets the necessary support to actually be reintegrated back into the community.
Elton, for those who are obviously not privy to how the proceedings or the parole hearing happens, walk us through what happens during that process.
Normally the process starts off when a person is in prison. Then they open up what they call a prison file for you, and that file is managed by the CMC, the Case Management Committee. They are all correctional officials that works within the correctional system. They prepare this file, and once they feel like you are a person that most probably would qualify for parole, you've done a certain amount of your sentence, is how you were sentenced, then the CMC would refer the matter to the parole board for their consideration. Now, the parole board, which is the Correctional Supervision and Parole Board, consists of a chairperson, deputy chairperson, 2 members of the community from various sectors, and then the secretary. But the secretary is a correction, and they would then see if the person's profile who's placed before us is suitably qualified to be placed on parole.
So, Elton, given the conditions that had been set out, some of the questioning what happens if Pistorius breaches his parole? If revoked, will a new offence be listed under their record? Help us also understand it from your vantage point.
Now, if a person breaches his or her parole conditions, because you are placed on parole based on the various conditions, if you breach them, it's not that a new crime is committed, it's just that you then forfeit the right to be further on parole, which is outside prison. Then you are being recommitted back to prison, and then you have to finish the entire or the remainder of your sentence in prison. But I've also seen in the past that people actually get placed on parole again, because then they have met certain requirements. So if he breaches the conditions, he gets recommitted back to prison to continue with his sentence while in custody.
Elton Hart, thank you for your time with us at the SABC and for weighing in. Of course, Elton Hart is from the University of Johannesburg's Law Clinic, just weighing in on news just coming in. Former Paralympic star Oscar Pistorius having been placed on parole.